Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start the mane of the lion. To get this started, the easiest way to do it is to take pins and mark out where you want it to be. So we're always gonna start at the base, kind of under the chin, right where you changed colors here. That's gonna be my first row. So I'm gonna mark the bottom of this here. Okay. So I'll put maybe 4 or 5 stitches just under the chin here. I would say maybe there. And you want that to be pretty even under the chin. And we're gonna build almost like a beard kind of going up the face. So I'm then going to start working kind of up and out. Okay. When we're working the mane in place, we're gonna be using this row here, the row right in front of the ear. That's essentially where I'm gonna stop. So I'm gonna build this to right about here, okay? And we're gonna start working the other side as well. So again, you're kind of going up and out. Each row, you're going back a stitch until you get to where that ear is. Okay, so looking at this straight on, it should look even. Again, you're kind of building like a beard around the face here. And then we're gonna be working in this row. So I know I'm gonna be working all the way up here. I'm gonna add these pins just so you can see where this is going here. The mane is gonna cover the entire base of the head past this. Okay, so our mane is gonna be worked from these pins all the way back. We're gonna do all these rows backing up to where the base of the neck is all the way around the lion. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get this mane started. I'm going to start at the bottom of the chin here in this stitch right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove these stitch markers, just these 2 right here as I get started. I'm gonna go ahead and insert my hook in, loop my yarn over, and I'm gonna start with a loop stitch. So I'm gonna go in. I do like to work at kind of a diagonal for a loop stitch. Under the chin here, we're gonna build kind of a longer mane. So your loops wanna be a couple inches, at least 1.5 inches. And then I'm gonna yarn over and pull through. This is essentially a single stitch, just adding a loop to it. Okay, so I'm gonna remove my next marker here. And you don't wanna go into this cream snout. You wanna work just right under it. Again, I'm just pulling up this loop, yarning over and pulling through. I'm gonna keep working my way around. So working here, again, working under the base of that snout, pulling up this loop, yarning over, pulling through. And this can really be as long or as short as you want. For reference, you can kind of look at this one here. You want this kind of longer chin hair on the bottom. Okay, so I'm gonna keep working around. Trying to keep my loops as even as possible. They don't have to be exactly the same. Now here I'm gonna start working up. So I'm gonna remove this stitch, and as opposed to working around, I'm gonna start moving up the face, still keeping this hair here somewhat longer. Okay, again, that's really the base of that chin there. This yarn tail can just hang out. We'll fix this in a later step. Okay, so as I start working up the face, you do want to pay attention to where these stitch markers were because those are shaping the mane. As I start to work up closer to the top of the face, I am going to make my loops a little bit smaller, just because you don't want these covering the face. You just want them kind of framing the face. So again, I'm going to keep removing these. You're moving kind of up and out. And these are going to start getting a little bit smaller of loops. So you can see here, this loop here is a little bit shorter than this one. That's pretty much what you want. Remove my next stitch. Go in. Again, I kind of go at a bit of a diagonal. And this loop is going to be even smaller. Okay. And we're going to keep building. And I am going to put 2 rows in front of this ear. One is going to be this short row here, and one's going to be a little bit longer. For reference, you can see this here. We've got this short row, and then we've got a little bit of a longer row just to kind of cover some of that. So I'm going to remove this stitch here, working best I can in kind of this second row. I'm going to give it these short little loops. You can see my fingers just holding that up a little bit. And I'm going through. We're going to do this all the way around in this row. Okay, you can see how short these little loops are here. I'm going to keep removing these stitch markers. Okay, as you start working down by the ear and kind of past the ear, you can start making these loops a little bit longer, because that's going to be that main hair that's kind of shaping the face around the sides. Okay, so I'm going to start removing some of these stitch markers here. Again, we're going to start making some of these loops a little bit longer now that we're moving past the ear. You can go back to those 1.5, 2-inch loops. And we're going to keep working down and around. Okay, moving around again. I'm going to remove that last stitch marker. I can see here where I need to be closing this gap. So I'm going to be moving down and around, down and over kind of. And these can be those full size loops. Again, I like mine around maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches, but you can make these as long or as short as you want. So with the first row of loops, your lion should look similar to this. Okay, so before I move into my second row here, I'm going to go ahead and take this initial yarn tail and I'm going to tie it off, and I'm going to get it kind of pushed back through the head, just like you would any other yarn tail, just to get it really out of the way. So first I'm going to knot it to just hold that first loop in place, and then I'm going to weave this out of the way here. Now, for working the second row of these loop stitches here, you're just going to be going up against this row. You don't want to go past the neck at any point. But I'm going to start working in kind of this sideways stitch. Again, these are going to be long loops. Your rows of short loops are now over. The rest of the loops that you make, you want to be somewhat consistent, around those 2-inch loop sizes, maybe a little longer. But I am just going to be working all the way around. And this is essentially what I'm going to do for every stitch in the rest of the head for the lion until the entire head is full. And for this second row, you do want the second row to go in front of the ears. It's going to kind of cover up that not so pretty row here. So I'm going to make these loops longer. They are covering up that first row a little bit. and we're just going in front of the ear. The rest of the rows will work back kind of behind the ear. But this one here, you can start to see starting to build more of that shape and more of that mane look. I'm gonna go right up into where the ear is here. And working all the way around. Okay, so as we start to come around the face, you really just want to follow where your stitches were in the first one. You can see it's going at a bit of a diagonal. I want to follow that shape because you want to make sure that you're filling in every single stitch on the lion head. You don't want any of this yellow poking through if possible. So I'm going to keep working around. Again, all of these stitches at this point are going to be about the same loop size. Okay, and I'm now getting close to finishing the second row of loop stitch. The third row is really going to be the final one that comes up under the chin here. So this is going to be the last row where we're going underneath the face. You want to make sure you get those nice long poofy loop stitches. That's going to help give it that really cute mane look. Okay, so you can see here I am getting close to where the body is meeting the head, and that's why this is going to be my last row going around here. Still following a bit of that diagonal as we're working up the face. Your third row is also going to be the first row that goes behind the ears instead of in front of the ears. And I just want every ounce of this golden face to be covered by this mane hair. Okay, so now that I've come up to the ear, I'm gonna start working around the ear. So I'm gonna go up to it as close as I can, but I'm gonna start working behind it now. Okay, you can see I'm going in the row right up behind the ear. I'm still keeping these loops nice and long. And the nice thing about doing these loop stitches in the head is if there were any little mistakes that you made in the head, this is really going to help cover them up as well, because you're not going to see any of that. This mane hair is going to cover all of it. And again, I'm just going right up around the ear. Okay, and as we come up to the second ear here, I'm going to be following the same instructions that I did on the other one, where we're working right up against the ear, but moving behind it now, as opposed to doing stitches in front of the ear. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I transition from row 3 to 4, because this is going to be the first time we don't go all the way around the head, around the base, underneath that snout. So we're going to go ahead and get this row wrapped up here. Okay, so as we come into the end here, you can kind of see this little gap here. I'm going to fill this in the best I can, and then I'm going to show you how I start working around the head. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the body and I'm gonna start working up and around, getting kind of right into this little nook here, but then I'm gonna just work in a circle going all the way around the head of the lion. You're not going into the neck of the lion, just along the base of the head. Okay, and again, as I kind of go into this little nook here, I want this whole space covered. So I'm gonna work down for a stitch or two before I start working up and kind of completing that circle shape. So I'm gonna work all the way down to the bottom of this face. Okay, and now I'm gonna start working back up. Okay, I now have a pretty easy circle shape to start working with. So I'm gonna continue following this, going into each of these nooks and crannies until the whole head is completed. Again, the face of your lion should start looking like this. Okay, so as I get ready to finish this mane here, I'm gonna just show you how I finish these final steps for adding the lion's hair and kind of closing these gaps. So as you move more into the center, it's gonna be a little bit harder to maneuver your hook in and out of, just because you're moving into those, that kind of magic circle, row 1, row 2, where your stitches were a little bit tighter. Just do your best to kind of get into these and still keep working in that circle best you can, getting into all these stitches to cover up that yellow part of the head. You can see it's getting a little trickier to maneuver in and out of. Still adding these long loops to the head. Okay, so I'm gonna add maybe 1 or 2 more loops in this, and then we're gonna be fastening this off here and kind of bringing some of these stitches together. Okay. All right, I think I'm gonna do 1 more here, just as I have a little bit more of a gap. Okay, so that pretty much covers all those spaces. I'm gonna cut a pretty long tail here because 1, I'm gonna wanna just tie this off. I'm gonna take my daring needle now and I'm gonna kind of whip stitch. You can see where this was my final circle. I'm gonna kind of whip stitch that together just so that way that gap is closed and you can't see it as much. I'm gonna go into those whole stitches there, making sure I'm not taking any of these loops with me. And that pretty much covers that. Okay, so I'm gonna take this, and we've already fastened it off, so I know there's a knot on the end here, but you're gonna wanna kind of work this through. Again, being careful you're not taking any of these loops with you. And you're gonna work this through the head just like you would any other yarn tail. And I'm gonna cut it. Okay. And that completes the mane and the hair of the lion.